speak after I've been introduced, I take it.
Okay, fine. Okay, you're live now.
Hello and welcome back. Virtual World's Best Practice in Education. It is my honor today that we have Ebbe Altberg with us. Very quickly here, Ebbe comes to Linden Lab with more than 25 years experience, leading teams and creating software used by hundreds of millions of users. After graduating from Middlebury College, he went on to work at Microsoft, where he spent most of his 12 years leading teams that created the world's most popular software products, including Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Office. In 2000, Ebbe moved to Ingenio Incorporated, where he headed up product and as a stint as interim CEO. As the chief product officer, he led Ingenio to become an innovative telephony and marketplace company, which was ultimately acquired by AT&T Interactive in 2007. Ebbe then joined Yahoo in Europe as VP Head of Audience, with responsibility for all consumer-facing products and affairs. After a couple of years, he was promoted to Senior VP Media Products, a group of about 800 engineers and product people that created the Yahoo homepage, news, sports, finance, and entertainment products and platforms. Most recently, Ebbe went back to a small startup, BranchOut, where he was the COO and managed the teams building products for professionals such as BranchOut and Talk.co. And it is my great pleasure to, without further ado, to introduce Ebbe Altberg. Ebbe, welcome to the Virtual World's Best Practice in Education Conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Phelan, for that introduction. Hello, everybody. I can't hear you, but I can sure see you. It's an incredible sea of people here. Very excited to be here. Very happy that for all the work that people are doing to put this conference together. Not only this session, but all the other sessions you're doing throughout the week. And I did pop in just the other day and listen in to Philip, which many of you here might have done as well. And I just want to say that I'm really excited to be here. I'm not going to spend most of this hour just talking. I will be saying a few things and up front, some degree putting some topics on the table for us to discuss, and then very much looking forward to it being a very interactive conversation between us. I'm mostly here to learn, not necessarily to tell, although I will be speaking about some things that I think matters to you and some of the things that are going on first. First, I feel very strongly that the education sector or the education market is a very important partner of Second Life, and that it's important to us to make it a great product for all of you. I know many of you have tried and been successful, and some of you have tried and maybe not been so successful in doing the things you wish you could do. And I'm here to learn more about what we can do to make you more successful in the future. I think the education sector helps us in a lot of ways in that if we can provide a great service to you, you can become great evangelists for us for the platform. And also, I think there are many times that you're pushing in areas in research and thinking about how to use environments and technologies like this differently from sort of your main consumers. So it's a very important group of people for us to stay in touch with and learn from and collaborate with. I know that originally education was an important aspect to Second Life and Linden Lab, and that in a few years back we made a mistake of sort of disconnecting with this community and increasing pricing and all kinds of things, and we're actively now trying to reverse that. I'm very happy that even before I came here 2 months ago, pretty much exactly now, the team had already decided to put the the better pricing for the education sector in place. So at least that was reversed with some slight improvements even. And I'm here to start the dialogue and the conversation to figure out how we together can figure out where we can go from here. And as we looked at things that might be of interest to this community, anything from the branding in terms of service and our interest in doing better integration with all kinds of products, let me touch on a few of these. Terms of service, I think I am working with my legal counsel to figure out how we can make it more obvious or very obvious that the creators of the content own the content, and that we obviously have no intent of ever stealing your content or profiting off of your content independent of the creators in some fashion. The current terms might indicate that we somehow have some plan to steal people's content and profit from it for ourselves without benefiting the creator, and that's obviously not our intent at all. It would be very damaging to our business if we started to behave in that way, since this whole platform is all about the content you all create. And if you can't do that and trust that it is yours, that's obviously a problem. So I'm working on that. I don't think it's, I can tell you now to just trust us that we're not going to do what the current TOS suggests we might be able to do. But we're working on some simple tweaks to the language to make that more explicit. We also have no interest in locking you in. Any content you create, we feel that you should be able to export and take and save, and possibly if you want to move to another environment or OpenSim or whatever, that should be possible. So we're not trying to lock you in either. Obviously it's important for us to make it easy to get content both in and out. So just want to put that right out there. Brand, I know brand has probably been an issue for this community. At times depending on how you arrive at Second Life, whether it's our home pages or advertising you might see advertising or content that talking to other communities that's maybe not so relevant to this community, but is relevant to other communities. And it's a challenge we have, that we have an incredible breadth of content creators for all kinds of purposes. And this is kind of a unique for Second Life, and it's something that's, I think it's incredibly important, is to support everybody in what they want to do. And to have that many different types of communities with that many types of interest and creating that many different types of content, we want to enable that, just like we all want to have those rights and freedoms in the real world. But to try and figure out how do you still make it comfortable for all these different groups of people to sort of ultimately be inside the same environment. This is an interesting challenge that we're going to keep working on to improve. But at the same time, I think we have to realize that we do want all these different users to be able to get the most out of Second Life. There might be some people that are interested in my position on sort of the metaverse and the OpenSim and interoperability and that whole category. I think primarily I'm mostly focused, for starters, to just get the verse part right. And then we can sort of think about meta later on, at least for me. And I'm happy that other groups, including Philip and many others, are thinking about how to push meta forward. But I think we still have so much work to do to just make the verse part of metaverse a much, much better experience, much easier for normal consumers and creators to be able to come in and enjoy and use. And it's, to this date, with all the work we're doing, it's still too difficult for most people. And this is the challenge, that you ultimately end up with a small or smallish. I mean, we're pretty big, but still relatively small in internet speak as to how many consumers and users can participate in this product. And to get much more mass market, it has to become easier to use. And there are obviously numerous technological advances that are happening, as well as improvements that we can do to the user experience. And that's an area that I want to make sure we spend a lot of energy solving, both, some things we can do in the short term, but a lot of things will take quite a while to solve. So that's probably where I lean in sort of priority. Make it much easier to use in advance of focusing on sort of metaverse or interconnection. Even the web today is not really interconnected. I mean, you don't really take your identity from one place to the other, and the internet works quite well without that. And so it's not a top priority for me. But it's not that I disagree with it. It's not that I don't like it. It's a matter of priority for me. Some of you might be interested in what kind of integration we can do to make it easier for you to use Second Life in the context that you want to use it. How do you make it easy to administer what users, students, teachers, faculty, whatever, that you want to participate in a particular experience, and how do you make it easy to manage that in one place, and whether that's some LDAP integration or something to so that every time new users come and go, that you want to allow on your in your experiences. Is there a way that we can do that in one place? I don't know if that's something we can deliver soon, and how many that would benefit, but I've heard that that's something that's maybe interesting to this community, so we should continue that conversation. And then I think we have still a tremendous amount of work, and actually there's a tremendous amount of work that has already been done. Second Life today is so much better than it was 2 years ago. And I think people haven't necessarily realized that all this progress has taken place. And whether it's the quality of the avatars, or the performance, or the fact that we can have this many people in one space and not crashing, this is due to a tremendous amount of hard work by the team here. And it's not the sexy stuff necessarily, but it's making this space that much more useful to all of us. And we're going to continue to push to make sure that quality improves and performance improves in a number of areas. But it's sort of this slow drip that it's not necessarily a big bang, but over time you suddenly realize that, wait a minute, this is not what it used to be like a couple of years ago. It's constantly improving. Like I said earlier, I think there's still a tremendous amount of work we can do in a lot of the subcomponents of Second Life. I kind of think that most subcomponents are not particularly great in Second Life. You can look at the communications tools, the social networking tools, the building tools, the rendering quality. I mean, you can look at almost any subcomponent and says like, wow, that could really be so much better. Discoverability, search, marketplace. I mean, almost everything we have, you can clearly see how it could improve. The cool thing we have is that the sum of these kind of nutty parts we have is still the most amazing thing that exists on the market today, and that's after 11 years, no one else has really figured out how to create this incredible environment that has this level of freedom and openness and ability for users to take it where they want to take it, and with a very stable and reliable marketplace where we have a currency exchange that is very safe and trusted. There's a lot of work going on to make sure that the currency remains stable. So what we have to do to sell Lindens into the economy to make sure that the currency exchange stays level with the dollar is something that makes for an environment that people trust and are comfortable doing commerce inside of, and that takes a lot of effort. And with that too, this massive scale that we have of dollars coming in into Lindens, and then all these incredible amount of transactions. I mean, the GDP inside of this world is, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And then a tremendous amount of money going out, being cashed out. And you can imagine the amount of effort we have to put into sort of with compliance to make sure that things like money laundering and fraud and all those things are sort of under control. So it's kind of crazy that we have products that subcomponents within Second Life that you see entire successful companies doing nothing but that one component. And we're sort of a collection of a huge number of these components that are each and every one of them very complicated. And that is part of the magic of Second Life, but also maybe why each subcomponent is not necessarily world class, but because with this size of team, we can, trying to do this much. We've bitten off a lot, and I'm really impressed with what the team has managed to do so far, and I feel very fortunate to be in the situation I'm today to be able to help us move forward from here. A little talk about future tech. Many of you have hopefully seen that we are obviously actively developing 4 technologies that we believe will have substantial mass appeal. Oculus being one. We've released a beta of a viewer that is compatible with the Oculus, and we'll have another update here within the week or so, where the depth and the realism of the 3D rendering inside is going to improve even further. So you can get really truly be in world in a very realistic way, and that's still with the old viewer. We don't really have our hands on the new version of the Oculus yet, but people that have tried it say it's absolutely amazing. I was talking to Philip. He flew down there and met with the team, and he looked at it and said it was an incredible improvement. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the next version of hardware there too, and we're running to make sure that as that hardware develops, we're right there next to it, making sure that you can all experience this world from the inside, not looking at it, but being in it, which is an incredible step forward. I'm very excited that Facebook stepped up and bought the Oculus team, because I think that is a big step to legitimize and express or indicates to the market that this is not just a niche thing, but this is something that will have an extremely broad implications for a lot of people. And we have the luxury of being sort of the ones that have been working on what a version of a sort of a virtual experience can be, probably the most advanced to this date. So I'm super excited that Facebook did that, and I trust that they will do the right things that will benefit all of us, not just them. I don't think they have a choice. And I'm also glad what that's doing for just funding into the market, what it's doing for other competitors to step up to do even more work on new innovative hardware and things that will, combined with Second Life and other products as well, will make the things that we are all passionate about here sort of go faster and faster forward from this point. So that's something I'm very excited about. We are, with the Oculus, we've done work for primarily focused on your viewing experience. We really didn't do any work yet, not that you can see anyway, in what the user interface for that would be. I'm sure many of you who have tried it realize that once you have the Oculus strapped to your face, the keyboard sort of disappears, and it becomes really hard to interact with a complicated product like Second Life. How do you communicate? How do you chat? How do you navigate? So those are areas that we're really interested in exploring, of how we can make sort of complete changes in how the user interface and how you interact with the world and how you navigate around and communicate and do all the things you want to do without being reliant on a keyboard and mouse ultimately. So Philip is doing some interesting things with his company, and many, many other companies are doing interesting things, and we're keeping a close eye on that and trying to make sure that we work with the things that have a chance of being mass market, and then push on user interface experiences that hopefully define how the right way of interacting in environments like this with this new hardware should take place. So that's my quick summary of a number of topics I put on the table for us to potentially discuss. I'm sure there's a number of things that you would like to discuss that I haven't touched on, and I'll be happy to talk about those. There's very few things that I can't talk about, so I'm now looking forward to taking some questions and see where this dialogue can take us.
Okay, well, I've got a number of questions that have already been submitted, and so I'll probably start off with the first one here. You had been talking previously in other sessions before this one about service. Are the community liaisons with Linden Lab going to be reintroduced?
Community liaisons within the community. I assume you mean the people that were specifically dedicated at Linden Lab to be engaging with the educational community. I don't know if we'll have what you would call a liaison, but we will certainly figure out a way where the dialogue can be open between us and all of you, whether this is a product manager or someone in marketing, or at times myself. I don't know yet. Depending on how that dialogue goes, we might have to have a dedicated personnel to facilitate that. Although I can't imagine that the things that we can actually do, technically deliver things that was going to make a difference to what this experience is for all of us. There's only so much we can do. So if you can understand what the priorities of the things that make the most sense to do, then that's probably where we should focus on, because otherwise there could be a lot of conversations without a lot of action. And if we have a full-time liaison talking to you all today, you can probably come up with a million things that we couldn't get to because we don't have the resources to do everything. So, whatever channel makes the most sense for us to figure out what is the most important thing for us to do to enable all of you to succeed. And we can't do all of it, but what are the most important things? And how do we understand, across all, and you won't all agree on what the most important things are. Some of you want us to do X and some of you want us to do Y. And we're going to have to figure out what's going to have the most impact for this community and give us the most traction in the education space, and once we know what those things are, it comes down to delivering those things and making progress. So that's
right. I've got two related questions here that have also been asked in the various chats, and so I'm going to skip to those two just because it sort of builds on where we're at right at the moment. So there are a number of communities within Second Life that have been self-supporting, and quite often most of them don't get any money. They don't get tier reductions. I mean, we're looking at groups like Caledon, Oxbridge, the Builders Brewery Group, the New Citizens Incorporated, these particular types of groups. And then we've also had groups, informal groups like the SL Mentors that used to get a lot of support from Linden Lab in terms of the type of work that they were doing. Basically residents helping residents, but quite often, they were sort of getting some support when we had community liaisons, but that seems to have disappeared and a lot of these groups have broken up. Are these things, is the lab going to encourage these things to come back? And is there an opportunity for groups like NCI and other Dreams and other groups that are out there to be able to also potentially participate in things like maybe the tier breaks that educations and nonprofits are going to be receiving?
I don't know exactly because I don't know any of these groups and exactly what they were trying to do. But if there are groups of people in there that were trying to that are trying to do work in the educational space, but they're not for some reason qualified according to our current rules for what is an educational institution, what is not. Is there a gray area there of some that sort of belong to that community, but they don't have the credentials to say that they really are? Well, I don't know. Maybe there's an area there we can explore where there are people that could be, we would put in the bucket of the educational sector, even though they don't necessarily have those explicit credentials to prove that they are, so to speak. And that can come sort of a tricky issue for us of who's in, who's out, who qualifies, who doesn't. But if there are people there working for education with the intent of supporting education but don't necessarily work at an institution that's specifically an educational institution, then yeah, maybe there's something we could do there. But it could be a lot of work for us, for everybody trying to say that they are, but they aren't. And so, but I'm happy to look at how that current definition is set and whether there's some flexibility in letting more people in at those rates.
Okay. Ebbe, do you feel that communications between Linden Lab employees and content creators are important?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the content creators is what makes all of this that we're sitting on and looking at and interacting with every day, possible. Without you, it would be just blank space in here. We're not in the business of doing content. We're in the business of empowering content creators to create experiences that then in turn draws in other users to experience those and share those. So that's incredibly important to us. I mean, I would say we're sort of breaking it down to three key segments, I think, as we think about how we look at customers on a go-forward basis. There's the consumer, there's the creator, and then there's the entrepreneur. I mean, I think most users in residence and Second Life can sort of be in one of those three buckets. And understanding how we understand those audiences, how we further sub-segment those audiences, how we have conversations with those audiences about what we can do to enable them, to empower them. Because the better job we can do to empower content creators to succeed, the better content we'll create, and the better Second Life will be for all of us. So we're all about that. So it's kind of crazy to me that the question had to be asked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude or anything, but it's so obvious to me, and it's obviously clear to me as well that when I first came here 2 months ago, that the general communications channel with all of you and us had unfortunately deteriorated from where Second Life was many years ago. I sort of didn't grow up, but I've known Second Life from the beginning. I was an early user myself. My son spent a tremendous amount of time on Second Life early on when he was too young to do it, but I was fully behind him to use it, and spent quite a bit of time with Philip and some of the board early on to understand Second Life, use Second Life, understand even the culture of the organization, understanding the relationship between Linden Lab and the users. When I first came here a couple of months ago, I was kind of shocked at what a tremendous difference it was from how I remembered it many years ago. I would say, in sort of, I was probably the most engaged with it or involved with it back in 2005, 2006 or something like around those years. And so it's a little sad to me, but it also was extremely low-hanging fruit to just start opening these channels, starting conversations, and whether it's me tweeting with you all or being on forums, I try as much as I can to participate in these conversations, and we've changed internally the culture as well, back more towards where it used to be, where we're more open, weirdly enough, when I got here, there was actually a policy telling employees that they could not be in World as a Linden. So we reversed that policy a couple of weeks ago, and I made explicitly a deal of spending time myself in World with some of you and some others to and all my experience of going in World and meeting with people completely unannounced, just hang out with people, has been super positive for me. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm encouraging the employees at Linden, once they've read the policies and the guidelines and have gone through sort of the boot camp of how to do all this stuff, to go back in and start having conversations with you. And so, yeah, I can understand where some of these questions are coming from because of some strange steps that were taken, and so. Some things are being reversed and some things are maybe being done differently, but we're definitely opening up ourselves to be more accessible and participating in the conversation.
Right. I've got two similarly related type questions here, and I'm trying to group the questions so that we're trying to keep the topics together as best I can here. So two follow-on questions here. Do your Agile teams decide what to work on each week? And then sort of further to that is, will there be opportunities to discuss about new and existing tools with the lab where we can have a bit of a larger voice in which features are being prioritized for future enhancement?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. We want to do more than we have been. But historically, with all my experience, is that it can take a tremendous amount of resource and time to engage in that conversation. And I'm not saying that we don't want to, but it comes at a cost. And unfortunately, a lot of people that participate in the conversation are not really up to speed on the topic, or people have very biased views, or they don't have the experience. I mean, there's only so many people on the planet that really understand how to develop products and how to prioritize these things. And so it can add a lot of overhead and cost and complexities to sort of try and design a product with a million users. So we do want to be more transparent. We do want to definitely participate with you so that we can get your feedback and learn from you, and correct things based on what we hear from you. But sometimes we actually learn more from watching what you do as opposed to listening to what you say. And I'm not saying that to one particular person, but just in general, I've found that the customer is often wrong when they ask for something specific. Now, when they say I have this pain or I have this need, they're pretty much always right. But when they say it needs to be solved this way, they're usually wrong. And again, many of you, I'm sure, is right at a number of topics many times, but it can be really distracting for a team that's trying to deliver something to get that variety of input. So it's a double-edged thing. We have to do it. We have to be more transparent. We have to involve you more in how we do and what we're going to do and what the priorities are. And at the same time, in order to stay sane and be able to do it in a efficient manner, we have to sort of keep some control of that. There are some things we might not be able to talk to because of competitive nature or who we're partnering with or stuff like that. And there are often times when we talk about things, some users get really upset when we change our mind and decide to not do something because something else becomes more important because they've now vested a lot of interest in participating in creating the solution. And we have to have the opportunity to change our minds quickly. Back to whether we choose weekly, yes and no. We are fairly agile, but a lot of these things that we're talking about, and especially Second Life, which is a tremendously complex platform, and also in some areas a bit old. So modifying it, improving it is not as simple as it should be. some projects can take, months and months to go from beginning to end, and you can't just change your mind every week of what you're going to do because you would distract those longer term efforts constantly. But we obviously want to be as agile as possible, and we're already discussing here how we reshape ourselves internally to become more agile, and figuring out how can those sort of agile teams interact with users that are relevant to the things they're trying to solve for, and engage with those communities, and then iterate quickly in what we do. Just something that, for Second Life is technically a little hard, and we have some organizational things to tweak to get to world-class level, but we're working on those things.
Okay, I've got a series of questions here which are all sort of marketing business related. I'm going to hit those first, and then I've got a pile of questions that are coming in with regards to the two more on the tech side of things. So we've got one here where basically the person is asking, can we expect a more aggressive media campaign to correct some of the quote unquote bad media narratives that are potentially out there? I think where they're sort of going with this is, there is this perception that's out there, especially that, Second Life is a great place if you want to engage in adult sex type activities. Yeah.
No, I'm well aware of that, and it's an unfortunate thing. I don't know how much of that historically, I wasn't here, so I don't know how much of that is self-inflicted versus sort of the dynamics of the market, sort of taking it to places. Now, certainly I think there are things we could have done historically to maybe control the message a little bit better, but never mind that. That's happened, that's past. Looking forward, it's obviously in my interest to make sure that people understand the breadth and the depth of what Second Life has to offer, and not be pigeonholed as an adult sex place or any other vertical for that matter. It's not something that's exclusive for education, or something that's exclusive to vampires, or exclusive to sex, or exclusive to any subject matter or category. Just like real life, we want to allow anything and everybody. I think that the one good thing is looking back, it seems to me that Second Life got overhyped too early. How much of that was Second Life, hyping itself too much, or maybe the hope was that it could become a product that tens of millions or hundreds of millions would use. But given the complexities of using the product and the quality and what you could achieve, it got as big as it got because of how easy or difficult it was to use, and how much value people felt they got from it. So I think the notion that Second Life or a product like this or a concept like this would somehow maybe displace the internet as we know it was obviously a little bit, I would say, swollen head type of thinking maybe at the time, and so maybe sort of what we wished for and the reality sort of we're a little too far apart, but at this and as part of that, then it sort of became this backlash of now, instead of it just being really cool but just not super broadly appealing, it became somehow bad or negative, which is really unfortunate because there's so much tremendously positive, good stuff happening in Second Life, and that's not just being heard or seen outside the walls of Second Life sufficiently. And then, so that's something that we want to correct, obviously. And I think things like Oculus and the market now, again, starting to embrace the whole idea of virtual reality and virtual worlds and all this. So it's sort of, there's a big opportunity for us sort of to restate what we are and what role we play in all these things that are happening. And so this is something that Peter and I, we chat about, and how do we do that? And when's the right timing to do that? We don't necessarily want to go out there and overpromise again and get a backlash again. So we want to be careful. And at the same time, we have to realize that, we spend a lot of marketing, whether you agree with it or not. And the conversion rate for people coming to Second Life and ultimately ending up inside of Second Life and actually having an enjoyable long-term stay with us is not super great. It's just you have to be really committed. You usually often have to have someone from the inside sort of pull you in because you have a really strong reason to go in there. And it's either because we're passionate like ourselves here in this place, or someone sucks you into this experience. But if you're not kind of uninitiated and you don't know anyone who's there and you just want to go in and see what it's like, you have to be really determined to make it all the way through and start getting value back from Second Life. And that's not a simple thing to solve. It's not just a simple, bitmap that change or simple messaging. It's a lot of things that people have to understand how to do, how to navigate, how to function, what do I do? Where's the right audience for me to engage with? How do I find people that are relevant to me? How do I find subject matters relevant to me? How do I find those are all very complicated things to solve for. And but we certainly believe that they are solvable. But it will take time. And we probably know more than anybody what has been tried and what's hard, what's easy, what's possible, what's not possible. So I feel we're in a great position to take it to the next level, but it's going to take some time.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question here with regards to strategy. We've had a couple of questions that have come in, and I think with regards to Linden Lab's strategy going forward, I think you've talked a lot with regards to that. I'm going to throw this one more in, and then we'll switch over to a lot of the tech questions that we have piling up here. So following OpenSIM conversations, would Linden Lab have a view or plans on positioning the Linden dollar as a currency outside of Second Life? Many think linking the financial systems to the hypergrid may favorably position the lab for the future.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would love to be in the position to enable that. It's a massive undertaking. I mean, I spoke to compliance a bit earlier. I mean, to do an economy like this at a scale that authorities and bankers and you name it are comfortable with is not a trivial undertaking, and we're very fortunate to be as far along in solving this. No one else has come this far, so we're spending quite a bit of energy on improving those systems to make sure that we can have even safer, high, even more transaction at a higher volume, and still have even better control over things like fraud and money laundering and all those complexities that you run into. And this is an area that there's a lot of extra eyeballs on this space right now because of all the things that are happening with Bitcoin. And I'm fascinated by Bitcoin. I think it's a really exciting thing that's happening out there, and there's a lot of plumbing required around Bitcoin, again, to make it safe, to make it secure, to make it legal, to make it compliant, to make all those things. And we've done a lot of those things. And how we can leverage that and go beyond the walls of a microcurrency within the walls of Second Life is something that is very interesting to us. But it's going to take a lot of work. And again, it's one of those things of priorities, but we are talking about those things, and we're doing at least all of the compliance work we need to do to make sure that we're completely in line with state and federal regulations. And we're sort of checking things off quickly, and we're hiring people that are experts in this area. And so, yeah, I can totally see us going there, but it's not really a short-term conversation. This is a long-term goal of ours. And if we offered it, what that offering would look like, and how we could extend the notion of a micro or virtual currency like this beyond the walls of Linden, that's sort of another step that I would think of, beyond just getting the scale and the performance and compliance issues resolved first. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can be offering that to the world in the future.
Okay. Like I said, I've got a pile of questions that are sort of in the tech field that are piling up here, so I'm going to start with those. Are there any current projects that you can share with us that are we can expect to see in the next little while that's going to make the viewer more intuitive and easier to use?
There have been efforts in this area to make the viewer more intuitive and easier to use. And actually, one effort that was done was not received super well. So one attempt to sort of simplify it sort of didn't completely take off. And I haven't yet had time to completely understand why it didn't succeed as well as we had hoped. But ultimately, in order for Second Life to grow, it has to become easier to use. I mean, that was what I spoke to earlier. It takes too much effort, and it takes too much time for someone to get fully sort of engaged and immersed and fully functional in the world today. And some of it is tech, some of it is user interface. And yeah, those are things we have to continue to work on because we're not going to go mass market to tens or hundreds of millions of users if it remains as complex as it is today.
Okay, so following up on that, we have another question here. Do you have any plans or interest in improving transparency and cooperation between third-party viewers in order to facilitate faster development, integration, and adoption of new features, bug fixes, so that the community as a whole can benefit from such innovations occurring faster?
Well, I think from what I know, from what I understand, we're doing a decent job today of collaborating with the open source community. Oz Linden has made sort of our interface with that community and those third-party players much better today than it used to be years back, and that community does add a lot of value to provide other types of viewers that are more optimum for other types of audiences, because we can't necessarily be everything to everybody, whether that's people with disabilities or people that on other platforms or what have you. And so it sort of stretches the type of use cases and scenarios that we can solve for with that community helping us. So I think right now we have a pretty good relationship with them. I'm not sure if I don't know that we're not being sufficiently transparent with that community. If that's the case, I would love to hear about it. But again, this is sort of it's a double-edged sword. I mean, a lot of good happens with that, but over the years, a lot of bad has happened with that as well. I mean, some open source developers took advantage of what they could do and did some nasty things. It takes a lot of extra work on our part to enable a successful third-party ecosystem, and we get a lot of benefits from it as well. So we're going to continue to work with that community with Second Life, and if there's something that's not working with that community right now, I would need to hear more specifics about it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out which one to go with next here. There's a question here, and actually, and I realize this is sort of, well, this is before your time. I'm not sure if you were aware of a product that Linden Lab was trying to promote a while back called Nebraska. But somebody is asking is whether or not a redistributable service, Second Life as a redistributable service, is potentially going to be introduced back into the marketplace again.
Yeah, this was the notion of a product that could be placed behind a firewall to give people sort of a private version of sort of Second Life that they can fully control membership and stuff like that. And it sort of spoke a little bit to what I talked about earlier about some integration, whether it's, for what purpose is this? Is it security? Is it ease of management? Is it, and we need to better understand that. I doubt we're in a position right now to take this product and make many copies of it behind firewalls. I don't know why that didn't succeed last time, but somehow it didn't. Maybe the market wasn't big enough, maybe the offering wasn't right, but I don't think we're in a position to take that effort on right now. I'd like to understand what it is that is trying to solve and see if we can solve that. rather than assuming that it has to be a box behind a firewall that someone else can fully control. I mean, I think there's OpenSIM out there that people can use for those kinds of things, I think. But I'd love to hear use cases that would enable you to do things that you cannot otherwise do. And then we can talk about what those solutions might look like. But I don't think we're about to go down the path of doing what you call Nebraska again, at least not in the near term.
Okay. A couple of more specific questions. Is there any hope that shared media, MOPA, can be fixed for Mac users soon? Because apparently Mac users are having trouble with in-world video.
Huh. That sounds like a bug. I don't know the status of that, but and I don't know if that's something that the platform is constraining us in some way, or if it's just a bug in our code that needs to be solved. So I'll have to look into that. I don't know the status of that.
Okay. Similarly, what tech from Hi-Fi can be used in SL? And unfortunately, I have no idea what Hi-Fi is. So,
sorry, well, I missed that question.
What tech from Hi-Fi can be used in SL?
Oh, well, I'm hoping a lot. I'm hoping I'm hoping High.
Oh, High Fidelity, duh.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping High Fidelity will create all kinds of advances that us and many others can benefit from to move virtual worlds and virtual reality sort of further forward. So the more people that are creating new experiences and new hardware and new interfaces and stuff that we can all learn from, that moves us all forward. So that's great. Philip and I know each other well. Philip came by the office here like a couple of weeks ago, where he and I chatted for a couple hours about things we're doing, and a group of us are going to go over and see the High Fidelity team. I think it's next week or 2 weeks. To again get demos of what they're trying to do, what they're working on, and what things can we do could help them, and what can they do that can help us. So I mean, we're sort of in the early stages of having those conversations. Again, I've just been here 2 months, but Philip and I are very transparent with each other, and we want to figure out how we can help each other. We have a tremendous amount of assets that would be valuable to them. And I'm hoping they can create a bunch of assets that could be valuable to us, and that we can both benefit by collaborating going forward.
Okay. There's
specifically things they're working on that are actually, if I think about it, that are interesting to me right now is the work they're doing with sort of bringing emotion into your avatar experience, where it's not just a sort of a fairly static doll, but it's you can see the expressions in someone's face. You can have a conversation with someone and sort of look at them in the eye, and when I you can not only hear me, but you can also see my expression. Am I expressing surprise, anger, happiness, sorrow, whatever it is? How can that emotion be transmitted visually, not just auditory? I think that's an area that they're working on, that I want to make sure that we provide those that level of emotional capabilities to our avatars to Second Life as well. So that's one area that I'm really interested on what they're accomplishing.
Okay. Apparently I've got a bit of a longer question here. I'm going to try to summarize this, but apparently there are some issues, especially with regards to schools and other groups located in Japan, Australia, New Zealand especially, where they're talking about broadband issues trying to connect to Second Life. And they're wondering whether it'd be possible to connect things like the New Zealand high-speed network to Second Life servers, and what can people do in those particular regions in order to expedite anything that might help them be able to communicate with the rest of Second Life more effectively.
Yeah, so this is a fairly big question. We're aware that obviously latency, as it increases, it impacts the performance. And obviously, the further away you are from our co-location facilities, we are in sort of the middle of America, you're going to have reduced, you're going to have increased latency and a reduced sense of quality or functionality. We have a very big partner working in Asia, and we're having conversations with them about how we can test more about understanding what aspects of our tech stack is sort of causing issues because of this. But ultimately, we have to create a technology that has much, much lower latency, much less weight. So the amount of data that we have to push over the pipe is reduced. And then ultimately, you also have to look at further about geographic caching or distribution of data centers or et cetera to make the experience as good as it can be when you're close to our facilities with good broadband. And so it's not one answer. It's significant investment in the tech stack to be of higher performance, as well as looking at networking and peering and whether we have to have additional places of infrastructure in other places. But then again, it becomes a tech issue of how do you distribute hardware around the world when you have users that are geographically dispersed that show up in that world. So regardless of where you put the hardware right now, some users are going to be far away from that hardware. And so it's not a simple question, but obviously we have to, in the long term, solve for this. And so as we think about the more long-term investments we're doing, this is definitely part of the problem set that we're going to tackle head on.
Okay. Are there, you had mentioned a little bit earlier, and somebody's asked a follow-up question. You had mentioned a little bit earlier that you were looking to allow a little bit more control to allow people to export their content. Will there be some type of an export flag or something that people will be seeing shortly that will allow them to sell their content or export it out of Second Life?
So as far as I know, there were nothing we're doing technically to prevent someone from getting their content out. Maybe we're not providing a user interface that makes it obvious or simple enough. But as far as I know, there's plenty of users that are getting their content out. And I don't know if it's us providing the functionality or if they figured out how to do it with third-party solutions or what have you. So this is not something that we're technically preventing. So maybe the question is whether we're making it simple enough directly from our interface to do it. And I just don't know if it might be one of those things that there's actually very few people that do this. And so it hasn't been prioritized high because there are sort of workarounds for actually accomplishing this task. That's my understanding. So if it's something that you cannot accomplish with either our tools or third-party tools to successfully get your content that you have full rights to and has not, doesn't have any permission set on it that it's actually owned by someone else, et cetera, then yeah, it should be possible for you to get it out. And whether and where we would prioritize us providing a process to make this more streamlined within our view or directly or something, I don't know how we would prioritize that. But it's not something we're actively trying to prevent. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we don't make it easy for people to rip other people's stuff. So you want to make it easy for some use cases, and you want to make it impossible for some use cases, and that's something we have to be mindful of.
Yeah, I guess one of my own questions actually with regards to that whole subject is, the whole premise with Inside Second Life is almost everything that you see here is a derivative work that based upon something that somebody else has done. So based on the current requirements in order to get something out, you have to completely be the owner of everything, including all the scripts and prims and graphics and everything. And quite often that's just completely unrealistic. A lot of people will buy things that are copy mod. They'll start off with something that they purchased somewhere, right? And that they have the rights to make modifications to create a derivative work. And now they've got something in here which is uniquely their own, but they can't get it out. They can't do anything with it. They can sell it, but they can't do anything else with it.
Okay, I have to look at that and understand it better. So it's a permission issue, and I don't know if there's some permissions that should allow an export that aren't. but I would have to have more conversations with people in here to understand it better. But I mean, the general principle is if you own it, you can take it.
Yeah, I think
and
Tamara
so,
makes the good point that ownership is probably the most complicated issue around all of that.
Of course, I mean,
Yeah.
ownership is obviously. Many of you will know that that's a huge complex issue for us to, to reduce, whether it's copybotting or stealing and, profiting from other people's work, et cetera. Never mind us not doing it to you. It's us making sure you can't do it to each other. And at the same time, not just come up with some sort of DRM policy that just makes it so inflexible that you can't collaborate and get work done together. So it's a very complicated thing, and I think Second Life has probably dealt with this issue more than anybody in the world over the years as well. So we have a tremendous amount of knowledge and tremendous amount of functionality to try and solve for this, whether the permissions you can set. The tools for us to monitor, tools for us to try and prevent stealing and fraud and all this stuff is incredibly amount of complex work we've done over the years, and we will continue to do because it's trying to protect you and your creations as well as we can, so that you're comfortable to spend energy and time on the platform.
Right. I do have a lot more questions here, but I do realize that we've also reached the top of the hour. So if you're okay to continue.
I would love to continue.
Okay, awesome. I want to pop in a couple of K through 12 questions because I think this is something that doesn't quite necessarily get talked about a lot. And one of the largest things, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Second Life used to have a teen grid. And the teen grid was taken down a couple of years ago, and then the policy extended to allow teens into the Second Life area under certain restrictions. But the question about security for students is still a big issue for those people who are dealing with K through 12 education. So are there plans to improve that as we move forward?
So yeah, I'm well aware of the teen grid. My son was deported to the teen grid when he was 14 or 15, after having spent some quite a bit of time successfully on the main grid, and he quit soon thereafter because there just wasn't enough stuff going on there that was his interest. There was not enough talent around him to be able to create the things that they were able to create elsewhere. So I can also understand the challenge with making that a viable, successful business. I mean, it's hard enough for us to make it a successful business for adults. So I think we'll probably spend foreseeable future on trying to make the main grid as we know at Second Life better, safer, cleaner, without restricting what people can do, and then once we've solved it so that if adults can use it successfully at broader scale, then we'd obviously love to see how we can sort of attracting other audiences, whether it's younger or what have you, for other special cases. But I don't think we're going to be tackling a dedicated teen grid in the near term. It just would take too much resource for us that would distract us from other things at the moment. It's unfortunate because I would love to do it, but I think it's just a matter of priorities, and focus more energy on what we can do to make a Second Life as we know it a more welcoming place for all of us. Not that we would open the doors to K on Second Life anytime soon, but I think if we solve the ease of use and the quality and a number of things, and also make our technology more flexible, hopefully we'll arrive at a point down the road where it wouldn't be cumbersome for us to offer it to more dedicated special interest audiences like that in a safe manner. But it's not a top priority at the moment.
Okay. There's been a couple of questions that we've received. Sorry, you actually answered the other K through 12 questions, so I'm going to move on. There's been a number of questions with regards to what are Linden Lab's plans for Mainland?
I don't actually know. What's the what's our goal for the mainland? I don't know. I haven't actually discussed specific plans for the mainland since I arrived here. I've heard things about it, if you will, but I haven't actually engaged in those conversations, and I haven't seen any plans to do anything radically different with it. I know there's some modernization efforts underway to make the overall product better, and it should be easy for people to get a nice plot of land with a cool mesh house, et cetera, and improve the quality of that sort of experience. But generically, we've had interesting discussions about how do people navigate around, what does teleportation mean to the overall experience, but I haven't had any in-depth conversations with people here about specific things we want to do to the mainland yet.
Okay. We've got a whole pile of questions again about community development. I think this is obviously the big hot button for everybody here today. Certainly there's a lot of people that are talking about wanting to get to see Linden Lab office hours back. Are there going to be any plans to reintroduce having Lindens around on a more regular basis?
Yeah, I spoke to this earlier, that the policy that Lindens with their actual Linden avatars, there's no policy against Lindens using alts in world, but there was a policy against Lindens using their Linden avatars in world, and so that's been removed. We just had a all hands meeting yesterday, and I'm standing there and talking to the group of people saying, I'm in there, I'm interacting with the users, and I want you to do it too. And as more and more of us comfortably go in there and re-engages with you and other users, we'll see where that takes us. But and if some of that starts to create formal meeting times between certain Lindens and certain groups, interest groups over time, I'm perfectly happy if those kind of things happen. I think some of them will probably start to happen organically. Some of them have already been going on. I know Oz and others have been, in world interfacing specifically with, for example, the open source community, third-party viewer community, and as people take interest from as they start to go in world, it'll probably be more relevant to projects that they're working on, that they want to engage with users and understand how the work they're actively doing could improve. It's also a matter of how do you do this at scale? There's so many users, and setting up an event like this is not a minor undertaking. You guys have put a tremendous amount of effort into putting something like this on. So right now, I'm happy if we can just get more of the Lindens in world to just start to sort of arbitrarily just start to interact with users and engage with users and make that sort of a comfortable, normal thing that we can all do, and we can all behave, and we can all respect each other, and we can all learn from each other, and see how that evolves. If there's some, if we were to do these types of special meeting groups, then what topics would there be? Who would facilitate? How do we make sure that it's something actionable comes out of it? Because we have a lot of work to do, and having people just sit in conversations all day doesn't necessarily get us closer to the results we want. So it's a balancing act. But there's certainly nothing that I'm doing to prevent those things from happening. If there's certain industry groups where it makes sense, whether it's an education one and a subset of the audience here wants to have a more regular check-in, or we can discuss that and see who of the Lindens would like to participate and make it useful for everybody.
Yeah, I've got 4 or 5 questions where are almost exactly word for word the same, and they're all, the esports community would like to know if there's a way that they can talk to Linden Lab directly. The Bar Association wants to know if, right? The machinima groups want to, everybody wants to start, now that they know that the doors are starting to be opened up again, everybody wants to sort of get their foot in there. And I think it speaks to a large part in terms of how much Linden Lab has really been a huge part of this community over the years. And then that was sort of taken away. So, yeah. So, I mean, this is, to me anyways, this is a huge thing in terms of us. Because like I said, I've got 4 or 5 questions. They're all exactly the same. And I don't know if you want to tackle any one of them individually, but for example, we have one here, which is there's a whole esports community, and they want to know, is there a way that they can get Linden Lab to support the development of esports with inside Second Life?
I don't even know what esports is.
Well, it may be a very specific product, but I mean, getting something a little bit more generic. I mean, there's a huge Machinima creators group inside Second Life. There's also a very large music group. There's a very large, well, education group. Obviously, you're meeting us.
Well, just like real life, you can almost think of every hobby, interest group, and so there's a tremendous amount of them, and there's only so many of us. And how many of these interest groups can we engage in conversations with that are very specific to their specific needs? That's a challenge. I mean, there's just too many. And how do we scale this conversation and this dialogue in a way that it helps us all in the best way? I don't know if we have the answer right now, but at least we've taken the first step of making sure that the basic interface between all of you and us that had basically to some degree broken down is repaired, and we're now completely okay to go back in and re-engage and start having conversations and dialogues. And I think we will learn over time how we can do it in an efficient way that scales, that is of benefit to everybody. I mean, I could have a whole army of people doing nothing but, talking to all the special interest groups. And so, I'm happy to spend some of my time doing it because I love to engage in these conversations and learn things. But it's definitely a challenge how to do it in an efficient, fair, scalable, and productive way. And so I'm all ears for ways that we can do to improve, to do it better, but it can't constantly be the answer that we just have to hire more people to have more conversations with more people, because even if those conversations led to fantastic ideas for what we could do we then have the people to actually go do all that stuff? No. We can only do so much. So we have to be very focused, and we have to think of things that will have the most benefit to the most people. Otherwise, we can get extremely rat-holed in a lot of areas.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. I think I can speak for most of us here, though, that to just let you know that you've got a massive community behind you that is willing to support the direction of Second Life and Linden Lab. And so, there are people that have definitely spent, hundreds and thousands of hours, contributing back to the community and trying to make this platform a success. So, I mean, it doesn't always have to be about how much money you've got, but just simply, we're the community, we're your stakeholders. We want to be involved. Yep. Come ask us.
Yeah, and there's no doubt of that. None of this would exist without the things we have done together. With just us, there's nothing. With just you, there's nothing. We have to do this together. So, if there are things the community can do, and if they want to set up programs and they can invite some of us to participate in these programs, I think today you will find more people who can and are willing to participate in those conversations than you did just a few weeks ago. So we're all ears, and we want to figure out how to engage with all of you as best as we can. No doubt there. So I agree 100%.
Okay, I've got just 1 or 2 more questions here, and then I think we'll wrap it up if that's okay. Philip, as you know, Philip was, because we saw you in the crowd there, Philip was on a couple of days ago, and he was doing our opening keynote. He was mentioning the biggest obstacle to mass adoption of virtual worlds is, in general, a technical issue. Or do you feel that there's some more deep-seated fear, perhaps, in the general public, reservations to engage this way with other people? Is there a need, perhaps, to study this further on a psychological, sociological basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably easy to say that it's also a technical issue because unless we do something technical, nothing in the product will change. So it's all technical. But and I don't know if we can just have conversations and let the technology be the same and expect change. I mean, the product and the technology has to change to create new opportunities and change. So, but I think there's probably been an underinvestment in user experience. And I spoke to that earlier, that it's too difficult, and it's a technical problem, but it's not necessarily just a technical solution. Understanding how people think and how they function and how you make something intuitive it takes a tremendous amount of work, and it's not always obvious, and it doesn't always look like a big project or a feature. It's sometimes it's the absence of features and absence of things that make something intuitive, and it can be very, very small things, and it could be very, very big things. It could be new hardware, new ways of interfacing with the product, more expressive avatars. It could be better performance. It could be easier way of finding communities and users that are relevant to you that you want to engage with. And these all have very different, solutions and needs. And it's a sort of, I think, a sum of a lot of these parts that have to ultimately take it to a point where it goes from a product that's appealing to a few million to something that's appealing to hundreds of millions. But there's obviously no doubt in my mind that we will get there. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm excited to be here, because I know we can solve this, and I know Second Life and Linden Lab are in a front seat of being able to make that happen. So that's my dream, is that we make this something that a huge number of people can participate and enjoy and contribute and socialize and learn. So it's just the beginning. It's more and more to come. But yeah, it is. I don't know if I feel the need to go talk to psychologists about how to convincing people that this is a safe thing to do. I think it is a product experience. It's kind of like what you do with a mobile phone today versus 10 years ago. And there's like one company that just sort of figured out how to make that sort of have that transition. And I think those kinds of advances need to happen in the area we're in as well, and they will. And we just got to make sure that we do a lot of those, and instead of someone else doing it instead of us. That's yeah.
Yeah. Based on current trends in the marketplace, I mean, we're seeing things like Yahoo bought out Cloud Party and then promptly shut it down, which was a little bit unfortunate. But Facebook has now bought out Oculus. You guys have just recently, in the last month, introduced Second Life on a tablet. Where do you see? Are there particular messages that we should be getting out of the tech industry that indicate where a lot of this is going in terms of virtual worlds?
Well, I think you have to look at those individually. They're all different, but I think in aggregate, I think it indicates that there is industry interest in solving the things that we are trying to solve, and the more people out there that are trying to solve these things, yeah, on one hand it gets more competitive, but I think it's great because it's sort of any one of us doing something that moves the ball forward sort of helps us all move forward. So and we need that. I think Yahoo's acquisition was probably my guess. I haven't spoken to Yahoo about it, but knowing Yahoo pretty well, I'm guessing that was a pure talent and technology acquisition. I don't think or necessarily believe that they had any intent or interest in getting into the space that we're in. Facebook buying Oculus, like I said earlier, I think is a tremendous thing. It's having a big company with that kind of reach, seeing the future that we all have been thinking about and working on for so long, and contributing to accelerate us getting there, I think it's a fantastic thing. And then you also mentioned that we brought Second Life to tablet. I would say that we have not. That's actually a third party on live that is using our open source technology to provide a viewer that's specific for the tablet format. The confusion, I think, comes in a little bit because we actually let them use a little bit of our branding in their product, but we have no technical involvement with that product or their business model. We have conversations with them, and we had them in our office here just the other day. Of course, we're collaborating with them like we do all third-party viewer companies or teams, and we were very happy to see that they got comfortable enough to improve the pricing model on that product. But I just want to make it clear that that's actually a third-party viewer.
Okay. I've got two questions for you, and then I'll sort of wrap up. There's a number of people asking how would we be able to contact the lab the right way in order to allow Lindens to be part of our groups and communities?
That's a good question. I don't know. Look, do we, Peter? What? Yeah, I mean, obviously, any of you could reach out to individual Lindens if you think that they have an interest or a passion for any particular interest group that wants to start something up. Maybe we can think of a way to somehow have a place where we can sort of list interest groups and what they're talking about, and then make sure that the Lindens are aware of those. And then, you know, if I'm interested in one, I'll hop in. And so maybe we can find a way to sort of have an interest group catalog of some kind or list, and so we can see what are the meeting times and what are the formats, and then people here that see interest groups that appeal to them can sort of jump in. Maybe that's a way to go about it. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like in the local chat we've got a Bring Back Torley campaign going on right at the moment.
Bring Back Torley campaign? I don't know what that means.
Torley Linden.
Yeah, I know Torley. Actually, he and I haven't met yet. When I was up in the Seattle office a few weeks ago, he was sick that day, so I haven't met him in person, but I've spoken to him, and I understand he's been a key contributor to the relationship between us and you all. So, yeah, well, Torley can go in world and hang out with you guys as much as he feels he has the time to do so.
Awesome, excellent. The last question, then we'll wrap up. If you had just one message that you wanted us to take back to other educators and to educational institutions with regards to Second Life and education, what would that message be?
I would say the message would be that we're here, we're willing to listen, we're willing to engage in dialogue, we're willing to have conversations about what is the future and how do we get there, and that you know, the doors are open now again. We want to talk to you. We want to understand you. We want to understand how we can make you successful in whichever way you feel is required to make that happen. So that's it. I'm here. I'm happy to talk to all of you. Want to learn and listen, and most of all, I want to make you successful. That's how we can all become successful.
Excellent. Ebbe, I would like to thank you incredibly much for coming out onto the Virtual World's Best Practice in Education conference. It was a massive surprise when Peter came back and said yes, that you were available to do this. So, and I think this is, you know, it's really heartwarming to sort of know that, you know, a lot of things are turning a lot around, you know, for the community here and ideally for the lab as well. So, you know, I'm looking forward to a lot more good things to come.
Yeah, and me too. And I can't wait for the next event, and I'll be happy to do this again. And thank you for all the people that have made this possible. to put this whole thing together. It's fantastic. I mean, just standing here and seeing all these people. I mean, how many people did we get going here at once?
Well, there's about almost 200 people here, and then there's another 100, 150 on metaverse live stream right at the moment.
All right. So, I mean, that's quite something to get that many people in a place. As far as I can tell, technically it went out without a hitch. So this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.